They didn't fall from the stars like heroes. They were torn from the sky like broken glass flung from a shattered window. The crash was violent. Screaming metal. Fire in the atmosphere. Then the howling silence of a world unknown. When Rhett came to, his ears were ringing and the world stank of ash and ozone. The twisted remains of the shuttle were embedded in the black soil around him like the ribcage of some ancient beast. Overhead, the twin moons of Aurelia hung in a sky tinged violet, their pale glow seeping through jagged clouds. He blinked blood out of his eyes and called out, "Kalen! Kalen, where the hell are you?" There was no answer at first. Only the soft crackle of cooling wreckage and the distant rustle of something moving through the underbrush. Then came the groan. Weak, but human. Rhett staggered toward the sound, slipping on moss-slick roots and uneven terrain. He found Kalen half buried beneath a fractured panel, his arm twisted at an unnatural angle and blood matting the side of his head. But he was alive. "Hold on, buddy," Rhett muttered, hauling the metal off with a grunt. "We made it, just barely." Kalen winced. "Where are we?" Rhett didn't answer. Because he didn't know. All around them, towering trees stretched toward the heavens, their trunks covered in bioluminescent vines that pulsed with slow, rhythmic light. Strange bird calls echoed overhead, except they weren't birds. Not quite. The underbrush shifted again. Louder this time. Rhett froze. The sound wasn't random. It was deliberate. Calculated. A low, wet snarl rolled through the air. He turned just in time to see it, a hulking shape slinking from the shadows. It moved like liquid muscle over bone, limbs too long, eyes glowing an unnatural shade of pink. Its jaw unhinged slightly, revealing layers of hooked teeth that pulsed with saliva. "Don't move," Rhett hissed. Kalen didn't need to be told twice. Another one appeared to their left. Then a third. A pack. Eskra. Rhett had no name for them yet. No mythology, no understanding. Only the primal knowledge that he and Kalen were prey. He grabbed a jagged length of metal from the wreckage. Makeshift weapon. Better than nothing. Then he grabbed Kalen's good arm and yanked. Run. They didn't get far. The forest was thick with roots and shadows, every step a gamble. Rhett half dragged, half carried Kalen, the other man cursing through clenched teeth with each jolt. Behind them, the Eskra moved like phantoms, silent one moment, crashing forward the next. They weren't just hunting. They were hurting. "We need to split," Kalen gasped. "They'll get us both." "Shut up. We stick together." "No. Listen to me. I can draw them. I'm already slowing you down. You find help. I'll hold them off." Rhett wanted to argue, but another snarl cut the night, closer this time. They were almost on top of them. Damn it. He shoved Kalen behind a fallen tree, cramming a thermal flare into his hand. "Light this if you need a distraction. I'll circle around and draw them off. We meet at the High Ridge sunrise." Kalen's eyes were wild. But he nodded. Rhett turned and ran, making as much noise as he could, snapping branches, crashing through undergrowth. The Eskra followed. Hours passed. or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning when you were hunted. Rhett finally collapsed near a thicket of glowing fungi, lungs burning, arms shaking. The forest was quiet now. Too quiet. No sign of Kalen. No sign of the Eskra. He was alone. And somewhere in the shadows, the world of Aurelia was watching. The creature was already dead when they found him, but Rhett was close to joining it. He lay on his back, soaked in mud and blood, a jagged piece of the shuttle embedded in the ground beside him. The carcass of the Eskra's limbs twisted, its ribcage caved in, steamed in the cool air. Rhett's right hand still clutched a broken metal shard, the makeshift weapon now bent and useless. Boots approached. Silent. Precise. Not the heavy crash of a monster, but something sharper, smarter. He blinked through the haze of exhaustion. And saw them. 5 figures. All tall. All armored and sleek, gleaming suits of alien design, form-fitting and brutalist, colored in tones of violet, silver, and black. Their helmets were angular, half-masks that left their eyes exposed, eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light filtering through the trees. The tallest stepped forward and knelt beside him. Her voice was sharp and commanding, but not unkind. "You killed this one? Alone?" Rhett tried to nod but barely managed a grunt. The woman removed her helmet, revealing sharp cheekbones, full lips, and pale skin etched with faint glowing lines that pulsed like veins of light. Her hair, silver white, was braided tight behind her head. She studied him for a long moment before standing. Then she turned to the others and spoke in a language Rhett couldn't understand, fluid and clipped, like blades scraping stone. One of the others approached and jabbed something into his neck. A hiss. Then darkness. When he woke again, he was clean. The mud was gone, the blood scrubbed away. His side ached, but it was bandaged. He lay in a strange cot made of woven fibers and suspended by cables inside what looked like a stone outpost carved into the trees themselves. Bioluminescent fungi pulsed on the walls. Outside, he could hear voices, training drills, and the occasional distant roar. He tried to sit up. A spear tip met his throat. The tall warrior woman stood at the entrance, her eyes locked on his. "You will not move until I say so." Her voice was calmer now, but it carried weight. "I am Seris Velterra, commander of the Crescent Guard. This is not your world, nor your war. But you bled in it. That earns you a question." "One question?" Rhett swallowed. His throat was raw. "Where's my friend? The other man, Kalen? Did you find him?" Seris didn't blink. "No. You were alone." A silence fell. Rhett exhaled slowly, trying to hide the stab of guilt that twisted through him. "Then what now?" he asked. Seris studied him. "Now you survive. If you can." The days that followed were a blur of pain and learning. The warriors of the Crescent Guard did not pamper him. They trained him. Sparring with blunt blades, forcing him to run with weights, teaching him the names of the plants and beasts that could kill or heal him. Rhett learned quickly. Not because he wanted to impress them, but because he wanted to stay alive. The women were disciplined. Deadly. They live by codes etched into stone and memory, every action measured, every emotion restrained. Yet, in rare moments, he caught glimpses of warmth, shared meals, laughter after drills, quiet honor in the way they treated the dead. Seris watched him often, never saying much, but always observing. When she finally spoke again, it was under the stars. They sat by a low burning fire, a silent guard nearby. Seris tossed him a flask. "You fight like someone who lost everything." "I fight like someone who doesn't want to lose more," Rhett replied. She gave a small nod. "You're kind. Earthborn. We thought you were myth." Rhett smiled weakly. "Some days, I wish we were." She looked at the trees, thoughtful. "The Eskra are changing. Growing bolder. They used to stalk only at night. Now they roam in daylight. They hunt in patterns, flank in silence. Something drives them. They came after us. Like they knew." Seris glanced back at him. "Exactly. And it is not just here. Across the sectors, villages have vanished. Hunting parties disappear without trace. And more of those things emerge." Rhett stared into the fire. The crackling embers mirrored the fear coiling in his gut. "Why now?" Seris didn't answer. But the tightness in her jaw said she was wondering the same. Somewhere deep in the forest, a howl echoed long, low, and impossibly close. The firelight flickered. And in that brief silence, both human and alien warrior understood, the real war hadn't even begun. Kalen didn't remember how long he'd been crawling. The forest blurred red, black, green until everything faded into the same cold ache. His arm throbbed with each movement, broken bones grinding against each other. He moved only because he feared what would come if he stopped. At some point, he found a crevice. Not a cave, just a split in the rock, half hidden beneath tangled vines and fungal bloom. He collapsed inside, breathing in the damp air, the stench of rot and minerals. Then, darkness swallowed him. When he woke, the nightmare hadn't ended. A sound like dripping flesh echoed deeper within the fissure. Kalen held his breath. Something was in there with him. Something large. He could feel its presence even before he saw it. Two eyes open, luminescent and pink, watching from the dark. A Eskra. Not lunging. Not snarling. Waiting. Kalen froze. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he couldn't move. The creature didn't advance. Instead, it slowly backed away, retreating into the tunnel. Luring him? Before he could decide, light broke through the vines above. Footsteps. Armor. Voices in a language as sharp as broken glass. Kalen was found. They weren't like the ones Rhett had described. These women wore darker armor, etched with red and gold. Their movements were less elegant, more forceful. They didn't ask questions. They simply took him. He woke again, strapped to a vertical slab inside a stone chamber lit by crimson fire. The walls were covered in carvings, depictions of beasts, warriors, and strange sigils that seemed to shift when not directly observed. A tall woman entered. Her presence dominated the room. Her skin was like polished obsidian, her hair a black crown braided with metallic threads. Her armor was ceremonial, regal but deadly. She didn't introduce herself. "You survived the jungle," she said. Her accent was crisp, her tone measured. "That makes you interesting." Kalen struggled against the bindings. "Who the hell are you?" She approached, stopping just short of him. "I am High Inquisitor Nizari. And you are either a gift, or a problem. That depends on what you saw." Kalen narrowed his eyes. "I saw death. A lot of it." She smiled. Not kindly. "Then perhaps you saw just enough. Come." The bindings released. Guards flanked him, but no one restrained him further. Nizari led him down corridors pulsing with red light and humming with ancient power. They descended into what felt like the veins of the planet. Then he saw it. Behind a transparent energy field stood three Eskra motionless, their heads encased in metallic circlets pulsing with soft blue light. Around them, alien consoles flickered, operated by warrior women in high-tech robes. Symbols danced through the air above their heads. "They don't attack you," Kalen said, realization dawning. Nizari nodded. "No. Because we command them." "How?" She gestured to the circlets. "Old technology. From before even our great-grandmother's time. Found buried in a ruin beneath the flame wastes. It speaks directly to their hive mind. Simple orders, but powerful ones." Kalen stepped closer, watching one of the beasts twitch slightly as its operator adjusted the frequency. His mind raced. "You're using them as weapons. We are surviving. The rebels want peace through compromise. We prefer certainty." Kalen turned to her. "And what do you want from me?" "A man from another world. Unpredictable. Capable of surviving alone in Eskra territory. I want to see if you are strong enough to be more than just a pawn." He thought of Rhett, his ideals, his loyalty, his constant need to help people. Kalen's jaw tightened. "And if I am?" Nizari smiled again. "Then perhaps you will not be forgotten like the others." Later, they gave him quarters. Not luxurious, but functional. He sat in silence, watching the red lights pulse along the stone. Power. Real, terrifying power. Rhett would have recoiled. But Kalen saw opportunity. The arena was carved into the bones of an extinct mountain, open to the twin suns above. Spectators lined the stone terraces, hundreds of alien warriors, silent and statuesque, their armor gleaming in a golden light. The air was tense, vibrating with ancient rituals and unspoken judgment. Rhett stood at one end of the ring, bare-armed, armored only in lightweight battle leathers provided by Seris as guard. He held no weapon. Only a wooden staff. The message was clear: he was not meant to kill. Across from him, Kalen stepped into the light. The crowd shifted. Murmurs rose. He wore ceremonial black armor traced with red, a gift from the High Inquisitor herself. He carried a short-blade dueling spear, its tip humming faintly. Rhett's heart sank. This wasn't a test of honor. It was a performance. Seris stood at the observation platform, her face carved from stone. Beside her, Nizari watched like a predator in disguise, lips curved in amusement. A horn blared. The duel began. Kalen moved first, swift and brutal, his spear slicing the air. Rhett dodged, letting instinct guide him. The staff snapped up, deflecting a strike, twisting to sweep low. Kalen countered, pressing forward, fury in every movement. "You shouldn't have come here," Kalen growled. "You shouldn't have changed," Rhett snapped back. They clashed, again and again, the wooden staff cracking against metal, sweat and dust painting the stone floor. Rhett held his own, but barely. Kalen fought like someone who had trained with blood and fire. Then the scream came. Not from a warrior but from the sky. A sharp, inhuman howl echoed across the arena. Everyone turned. Black shapes emerged beyond the walls. First one. Then 5. Then a dozen. Eskra. The monsters vaulted the perimeter, tearing through guards and spectators alike. Chaos erupted. Shouts. Blades drawn. Screams drowned by roars. Rhett barely had time to react before a Eskra lunged at Seris' platform. He ran. Leaping over bodies, ducking debris, he reached her just as the creature struck. He tackled Seris sideways, rolling with her across the stone as the beast smashed into the platform behind them. "I'm fine," she gasped, but Rhett had already grabbed a fallen spear. Together, they fought back. Rhett covered her flank while Seris slashed through the creature's neck. Blood sprayed in a violent arc. Another Eskra leapt, and Rhett hurled his spear, striking its eye mid-air. Across the chaos, Kalen stood motionless. Then, calmly, he turned and walked toward the fallen bodies of 2 Crescent Guard captains. He knelt not to aid them, but to slit one's throat. It was fast. Clean. Deliberate. Then he took something from the corpse, an amulet, a ring, a data chip no one saw clearly. And he vanished into the smoke. The battle raged. Eventually, the tide turned. The guards regained control, and the surviving Eskra were slain or driven off. When silence finally returned, the arena was painted in blood and ash. Seris stood over the fallen, her expression unreadable. Rhett watched the distant gates where Kalen had disappeared. A line of crimson trailed behind him. It wasn't just monsters that had broken into the arena. Something darker had been let loose. The jungle was not silent anymore. Ever since the attack on the arena, the outer forests had become restless. Patrols returned with fewer soldiers. Scouts vanished without trace. And Rhett noticed something else: patterns. The Eskra weren't just beasts anymore. They were hunting in formations. Coordinated. Synchronized. Like wolves. Or worse, soldiers. He and Seris stood on a ridge overlooking the western perimeter of the Crescent Guard's territory. Below them, a team was clearing out what remained of a scouting outpost. Bodies had been stripped, not by claws but by surgical precision. "They didn't feed," Seris murmured, crouching beside one of the bodies. "They killed, then retreated." Rhett felt a chill ripple through his spine. "They are not random anymore?" "No," Seris said, rising. "They are becoming something else. Someone is guiding them." They both knew who. Back at the inner camp, the atmosphere was tight. Whispers of betrayal. tension between the reformists and traditionalists. And in the shadows, Kalen moved like a ghost. He had returned after the attack, claiming injury and confusion. His lies were polished, effortless. Many believed him. Some admired him. Seris did not. She avoided him when she could. And when she couldn't, her eyes turned cold. But Kalen did not retreat. One evening, under the flickering light of the forge fires, he found her alone. Seris was sharpening her blade, her armor off, dressed in the light combat leathers of her rank. "You never answered my question," he said. She didn't look up. "I rarely answer questions I don't respect." Kalen chuckled, stepping closer. "You've grown colder. That's new. Or maybe he thought something in you." She stopped. Looked up. "If you mean Rhett, then yes. He reminded me what honor looked like." "Honor?" Kalen repeated, almost mocking. "He's soft. He doesn't belong here. He's still playing hero." "And yet, he saved my life," she said. "While you vanished into smoke." Kalen's jaw clenched. "I was fighting my own battle." She stood, the blade gleaming between them. "What do you want, Kalen?" He smiled. "You. I want a partner, someone who sees the future clearly. Someone who understands what power really is." Seris didn't flinch. "Then look elsewhere. I've chosen." His smile faded. "You'll regret that." Later that night, near the outskirts of the eastern boundary, Rhett and two scouts came across a strange sight. A wounded escrow limped through the trees, dragging one leg behind it. Rhett prepared to attack, but the creature didn't run. It turned to them, snarled weakly, then collapsed. Rhett approached slowly, spear raised. That's when the ground exploded. Hidden devices, mines laced with plasma charge, detonated beneath the scouts. One was killed instantly. The other screamed as fire engulfed him. The escrow rose, uninjured. It had faked the limp. Played bait. Rhett fought with everything he had. His spear cracked against the creature's skull, forcing it back. He drove the blade deep, then deeper, until it stopped moving. Breathing hard, Rhett turned to the wreckage. One scout was gone. The other burned beyond help. It wasn't just an ambush. It was a message. Back at camp, Seris read the report in silence. "Kalen's people?" Rhett asked. "I think so," she replied. "He has access to our patrol routes. He's been too close to the Inquisitor's circle. And now the beasts hunt smarter." Rhett lowered his voice. "He wants you. He's using the escort to get you alone." Seris stared into the fire. "Then let him try." The stars were quiet witnesses to betrayal. The Crescent Guard's main encampment shimmered under the twin moons, its walls glowing faintly with bioluminescent moss. Guards patrolled the outer perimeter, unaware that the night would end in screams. Kalen moved through the shadows like a man who belonged to none of them. His armor had changed, no longer the ceremonial black of the Inquisitor's court, but something leaner, sleeker. Tactical. He found Commander Thalira alone in the command tent, studying troop movement patterns by glowing mate light. She looked up when he entered, brows raised. Kalen. This is restricted. He moved before she finished. One step, then a blade. Silent, clean, straight through the heart. Her eyes widened in disbelief, then dimmed. He held her a moment as she fell, whispering, "For the future." By the time the first scream echoed through the valley, it was too late. They came from the eastern woods, 24 Eskra, maybe more, herded and released by signal. They tore through the perimeter like water through cracked stone. Bodies fell. Alarms screamed. Chaos bloomed. Rhett was in the refugee quarter when it began, tending to a wounded boy from an earlier skirmish. The moment the ground shook, he grabbed his blade and ran. Tents collapsed. People scattered. Mothers screamed for children. He saw one Eskra barreling through the central path, jaws open wide. He met it head on. Steel clashed with bone and sinew. He ducked, rolled, slashed upward. Blood sprayed. But there were more. He shouted for the refugees to move, to flee toward the river path. Another Eskra lunged at his side. He blocked with his arm, felt the teeth tear into flesh. Still, he fought. He killed 3 before the 4th slammed him into a stone post. His ribs cracked. Vision blurred. But he stood again. Somewhere in the chaos, Seris was captured. Kalen's operatives moved fast, disguised among the fleeing. They didn't harm her. Not yet. They drugged her, bound her, and carried her into the forest. By morning, she awoke in a dark ceremonial chamber, the architecture unmistakably of the old warrior caste. Kalen stood over her, arms folded. "You'll be safe here," he said calmly. "Your people will survive, if you choose wisely." Seris tried to rise, but chains at her wrists held firm. She spat at his feet. "You disgust me." Kalen didn't flinch. "You love him. I understand. But love is weakness. I offer strength. You offer chains," she said. "I'd rather die than wear your name." "You may choose that," he said. "But if you do, I cannot guarantee what happens to your people when the next wave of Eskra is unleashed." She glared at him in silence, fury radiating. In the Crescent camp, the fires burned low. Survivors gathered. Rhett lay on a stretcher, his side bandaged in haste. Blood seeped through the wraps. His vision was pale, his breath shallow. He tried to sit up. "No," the medic hissed. "Lie still. You'll die." "She's gone," he whispered. "Seris, he took her?" The medic's eyes filled with dread. "Then we're already at war?" The camp had become a graveyard of ash and silence. But silence does not last. As dawn broke over the shattered horizon, Rhett rose from his cot. His bandages were soaked through, his steps uneven, but his eyes burned with fire. He had no title, no army. Only a voice and pain deep enough to carry it. By mid-morning, the survivors had gathered. Not just warriors, but the wounded, the displaced, the broken. Rhett stood before them, wind slicing through his torn cloak. A hush fell as he raised his voice. "Kalen did this," he said. "He murdered the Lyra. He unleashed the Eskra. And he will do it again." Unless we stop him. Unless we stand together. There were murmurs. Doubts. But they listened. He's no savior, Rhett continued. He controls the monsters. I saw the collars. I saw the frequency spikes. These attacks, they are not wild. They are coordinated. And they are his. That truth broke the silence. Rage stirred. Old warriors clenched fists. Even the young stood taller. For the first time since the attack, hope flickered. Within hours, banners rose. The Crescent Guard, what remained of it, mobilized. Other scattered factions, once cautious, now aligned behind Rhett's cause. Not because he promised victory, but because he refused surrender. And so the counter-strike began. Kalen's stronghold was built atop a ruined observatory from a forgotten age, high stone towers wrapped in thorns and carved with glyphs. Eskra patrolled its edges, more disciplined now, wearing metallic circlets that pulsed with eerie blue. Rhett and the rebels moved fast. Under cover of dusk, they surged into the valley, clashing steel with fang, bone with wool. The air burned with roars and war cries. At the center of it all, in a chamber lined with obsidian and flickering data scrolls, Seris stood chained no longer. She had broken her bonds the night before, carving a shard from the wall to disable the locking mechanism. Now, she walked into the central tower, blade in hand, fury in her breath. Kalen stood atop the dais, arms open. Seris, he said, almost tender. You came back. I came to end this. Before he could move, the walls shook. Explosions sounded from below. Rhett and his strike team had breached the gate. Kalen's composure cracked. He turned to activate a control panel, one that linked directly to the hive signal transmitter for the Eskra. Seris hurled her blade. It struck the console, sparking and sizzling. Enough, she shouted. Rhett burst through the broken doorway moments later, bloodied and breathless. His eyes met Seris's and held. She stepped forward. There's something you need to know, she said, loud enough for Kalen to hear. I'm pregnant. The silence that followed was seismic. I don't know if it's yours, she said, looking to Rhett, then to Kalen. But I know who I want to raise it with. Kalen's expression twisted. Then it dies with you? He lunged. Seris moved faster. The clash was brief, brutal. She parried low, Rhett struck high. Together, they brought him down. As Kalen collapsed, defeated, and bleeding, he looked at the control panel, now sparking, ruined. The Eskra outside began to thrash and retreat, disconnected from his influence. He laughed once, bitter. You still think love wins wars? No, Rhett said, kneeling beside him. But it ends them. The light left Kalen's eyes. Outside, the battle turned. Leaderless, the monsters scattered. The rebel forces drove them out. By nightfall, the observatory burned. And under the stars, Seris stood beside Rhett, a hand over her stomach, uncertain of the future but finally free to choose it. The battlefield was a storm of screams and smoke. Kalen's fortress, once the seat of his rising dominion, had become the final theater of his downfall. Fires raged through shattered towers. Blood soaked the stone halls. and above it all, the Eskra ran wild. The command override was destroyed. Their links severed. The monsters he once bent to his will now tore through both friend and foe. It was chaos, carnage, and retribution wrapped in one. Rhett fought with fury born of pain and purpose. Every strike was for the fallen. Every breath was borrowed from the dead. His ribs still ached, his vision blurred at times, but he moved like fire incarnate. Seris was at his side, her blade dancing through the night air, her silver hair matted with sweat and blood. They fought not for victory, but for something greater: freedom. From tyranny. From fear. From the endless cycle of violence. Then, through the dust and fire, Kalen appeared. He was limping, armor cracked, and eyes burning with the madness of a man who had lost everything but refused to yield. Around him, 3 Eskras circled, not attacking, but waiting as if sensing their master's unraveling. Rhett stepped forward. "It ends here." Kalen's laugh was a cough of blood and spite. "You think you've won? You think love and ideals survive fire?" "No," Rhett said. "But they survive you?" With a roar, Kalen charged. The Eskra followed. The final clash was not elegant. It was raw. Brutal. Seris moved to flank, but one of the creatures lunged, forcing her back. Rhett met Kalen head-on. Steel rang against steel. Sparks flew. Each man knew the other too well. Theirs was a dance forged in brotherhood, shattered by ambition. Blades slipped. Blood spilled. Then, Rhett found the opening. With a guttural cry, he drove his sword deep into Kalen's chest. But Kalen didn't fall immediately. He stumbled back, eyes wide not in pain, but in disbelief. Behind him, the Eskra twitched. Then turned on him. They descended without hesitation. Rhett turned away as the creatures tore into the man who once shared his childhood, his dreams. Screams echoed briefly, then silence. The beasts fled soon after, sensing the battle was no longer theirs. What remained of Kalen was buried in the ruins of his ambition. When the last Eskra fell or vanished into the wilderness, the war was done. The sky cleared, smoke drifting away like a curtain lifting on a new act. The people gathered: warriors, refugees, broken families, and looked not for crowns, but for answers. And they found Rhett. He didn't want a throne. But he accepted responsibility. Not as ruler, but as guardian. As the bridge between what was and what could be. Ceremonies were held. The old banners burned. New ones were stitched from the torn flags of both sides, silver threads on deep blue, symbolizing unity from fracture. Seris stood beside him throughout. When asked who she was, she simply said, "The sword that never broke." Weeks passed. In the quiet after the storm, Rhett and Seris walked through the rebuilt gardens of the inner city, once a war zone, now reborn with life. Children played. Traders returned. The air smelled of hope. They stopped beneath a flowering tree that had somehow survived the siege. "Do you think they'll ever forget what happened here?" Rhett asked. "They shouldn't," Seris said. "But they'll heal. Just like we are." She placed his hand gently over her stomach. "He or she will never know the world we fought in," she whispered. Only the one we made after. Rhett smiled. For once, it wasn't weary. Beneath a canopy of stars, with blood behind and life ahead, they stood together. Not as conquerors, but as the beginning of something worth fighting for.